Immanuel Kant's theory of ethics is one of the more interesting and engaging topics to discuss. That is the main reason his groundwork for the metaphysics of morals has done a lot of, it's been highly analyzed and discussed amongst a lot of works in moral philosophy. Kant's theory is focused on reason and duty as opposed to consequences like utilitarianism. He believes in the goodwill being the only motivation that should be required for an action or decision to be considered good. He isn't concerned with the outcome of the decision, but rather the actions or the intentions, the reason for doing said actions. Kant believes that it is irrational and inconsistent to be immoral. The reason for doing immoral actions and the logic that leads people to doing this, he deems them incomprehensible. Uh, he also believes in the fairness of it all. The basis of his theory lies in the ability of the actions and decisions you take to be fair, consistent, and rational. In order for these actions to be considered good, they have to be done out of your own goodwill. Personal autonomy has to factor in for it to be considered good. If your actions are done because someone told you, instructed you to do them, they can't really be considered good. There's no personal autonomy involved. If you're doing this out of because you want something in return, in his theory, can be considered good. Now, how do we determine what actions are right and good? Kant derived the way to do that with his categorical imperative system, a system that eliminates the obstacles that prevents an action from being right and good. Basically, they identify. You put the actions that we take. They identify which of them satisfies a certain uh, group of conditions before they can be considered good or not. Now, before I explain the system, I'd like to highlight that Kant made the system because he believes there are no ifs in morality, that you should follow simply what you ought to do. He believes in our ability to reason and be rational enough to do these actions for duty's sake. He derived the categorical imperative because he wanted to eliminate the possibility of contradictions in our actions because he believes there's no contradiction in morality and reason, which there isn't. So his a categorical imperative system is absolute, leaves no room for nuance. Yeah, that's pretty much how does it work. The categorical imperative system use maxims, which are basically the rules that guide our actions. Let's say you have a machine that you put maxims in, and they go through like the three stop gaps called formulations, which passes or fails. It passes or fails. The formulations passes or fail them, depending on if they are able to abide by the rules at each point before exiting the machine. So basically, at each formulation, there is a certain rule that must be considered, must be met before it can pass it, so that it can be accepted as a moral good in Kantian ethics. The first formulation is the law of universalizability. What is that? It states that we should act according to a maxim that you can will without contradiction to become a universal law of nature. So basically, everyone has to be able to do it without it being a detriment of society for it to pass as a formulation. The second formulation is humanity principle, which says that we should treat everyone as an end and not as a means to an end. Every individual should be treated as an end and not a means to an end, or at least they should not be treated merely as a means. You have to consider their agency. And the third formulation is similar to the first one. Can you use that maxim as the law for everyone? For example, do not steal. It passes all three formulations, so it's valid in that theory. You can universalize a law that says you shouldn't steal, and it also satisfies treating everyone as an end, including yourself. And there are two major types of contradictions in Kantian ethics: the contradiction of conception and the contradiction of will. If you universal for conception, if you universalize lying and everyone lies, the concept of lying and truth will be violated and basically have no meaning. And with the contradiction of will, if you universalize the law of not helping others, we make a world where we can get the help we would need if we want them. That affects our ends, and it's not a rational thing to do. There are some objections with Kant's theory. The major objections against Kant's theory are the lack of regard for consequences. It is addressed in a popular scenario, which is the murderer at the door. A murderer comes to your house, knocks on the door. First, your friend comes to your door, your house, comes to hide from a murderer. Then the murderer comes to knock at the door looking for your friend. Would you lie to them, or would you tell them where your friend is? Lying to them violates the categorical imperative, but telling them the truth satisfies it, but it leads to your friend or family member dying. Now, it's not a rational thing to do if you basically allowing someone to go get killed. Even if it's a stranger, not to talk about your friend, you're basically allowing them to get killed. But according to Kantian ethics, yeah, that's what you ought to do. Another objection of Kant's theory is the vagueness of the categorical imperative, because there's a lot of subjectivity in what constitutes a maxim. Like, what is a maxim? What exactly? It's a lot of subjectiveness in the what you choose as a maxim and what satisfies the formulations, and it can cause a moral conflict, like the murder at the door scenario. Lying is immoral, but you basically aiding someone to get murdered, which seems to be more immoral. So it's a moral conflict. Yeah. Well, thank you.